Chapter 18. The Dragon Kennel. Jenna and Wolfboy were outside Spitfire's kennel. Although the kennel was only a couple months old, the door had already acquired a battered look, and was showing some serious splits that had been repaired by metal ties. "You take one side of the bar and I'll take the other," Jenna told Wolfboy. "They're really heavy. Sep always gets someone to help him, usually me." The door was barred with 3 broad iron bars, and it was the top one of these that Jenna and Wolfboy were about to lift off. Septimus had not liked keeping Spitfire locked up at night, but he had been forced to give in after a deputation of wizards had refused to leave Marcia's rooms until something was done. Up until then, Spitfire had been allowed the run of the Wizard Tower courtyard, but the combination of a free-range young dragon and 2-foot-high piles of dragon droppings had led to trouble, and soon there was scarcely a wizard who, late at night, had not inadvertently walked into one of those piles and lost a boot, or even worse, fallen in head first and had to be pulled out. Spitfire had also developed a taste for the blue woolen cloaks worn by the ordinary wizards, and the dragon enjoyed nothing more than a quick chase around the courtyard in pursuit of a tasty-looking cloak to work up an appetite. The kennel was reverberating to the sound of the young dragon's snores, for Spitfire, who had reached the dragon equivalent of a teenager, had recently begun to sleep late in the mornings. But as Wolfboy and Jenna lifted the bar and placed it carefully on the ground, Spitfire woke up. With a great crash, his tail smashed against the rafters of the roof, and a loud crack of splintering wood resounded through the air. Wolfboy jumped back in shock, but Jenna, who had heard worse noises by far coming from Spitfire's kennel, stood her ground. "Sorry, Jenna," said Wolfboy, a little shamefaced. "Wasn't expecting that. Here, I can do the other 2. To Jenna's surprise, Wolfboy heaved off the badly bent middle bar and the lowest bar all by himself and dropped them onto the ground with a clang. Inside the kennel came an answering smash as Spitfire thumped his tail with excitement at the prospect of being let out. Now all Jenna had to do was unlock the kennel door. She fetched the large key that hung on a hook and placed it in the big brass keyhole. "The door opens outward," she told Wolfboy, "so you have to be careful it doesn't smash into you when Spitfire comes out. And keep your feet out of the way, too, as he likes to tread on your toes. Sep always says he does it by accident, but I reckon Spitfire does it on purpose. He thinks it's a game. He likes the way people hop around yelling and holding their feet." Jenna turned the key. The door crashed open, and Spitfire hurtled forward, neck outstretched to catch the cool morning air, claws clattering down the ramp. At the foot of the ramp, the young dragon stopped and looked around as if puzzled. He tilted his head to one side, and then, seeming a little dejected, he sat down unusually quiet. Spitfire was growing into a handsome young dragon, although he was still only about 15 feet long, half his eventual adult size. He already looked large and powerful. His brilliant green scales shone in the early morning drizzle, and rippled across his huge shoulder muscles as he shifted position slightly. His leathery greenish-brown wings were neatly folded on either side of the row of thick black spines that ran along his backbone, from just behind his ears to the very tip of his tail. Spitfire's emerald green eyes flashed, and his wide nostrils flared as he sniffed the air, searching for the scent of Septimus Heap, his imprinter. Keeping a tight hold on Septimus's boots, Jenna approached Spitfire with some caution, careful not to make any sudden movements, for he could be unpredictable in the mornings. But the dragon did not react, as Jenna walked slowly up to him, and laid her hand on the cool scales of his neck. "Septimus is not here, Spitfire," she said gently. "I'm here in his place." Spitfire regarded Jenna suspiciously and sniffed the boots. Then he snorted and blew out a large greenish-gray blob of dragon snot, which shot straight across the courtyard and landed with a resounding splat on one of the second-floor windows of the wizard tower. A moment later the window was thrown open, and an angry wizard poked her head out. "Hey!" she yelled. "Can't you keep that beast under control? It took me 3 days to scrape the last stuff off." And then, seeing that it was Jenna rather than Septimus with the dragon, Oh dear, sorry, your majesty," and slammed the window closed. "Don't call me that," Jenna muttered. And then, seeing Wolfboy's quizzical look, she said, "I'm not queen. They shouldn't call me that, and I don't ever want to be queen either." Wolfboy looked surprised, but he said nothing, which is generally what Wolfboy did when things became a little tricky. "I've got to do the locum tenens now, 409, said Jenna, looking a little anxious. "I hope it works." "Course it'll work," said Wolfboy, who was of the opinion that Jenna could do anything that she wanted to. He watched Jenna take Beetle's scruffy card of instructions from her tunic pocket and read them slowly. Then open an old toffee tin, draw out a fragile sheet of blue dragon skin, and carefully unfold it. Jenna sat down quietly beside Septimus's boots, and Wolf-Boy saw her lips move as she read the words on the dragon skin over and over, painstakingly memorizing them. He was surprised at how long it took, almost as long as he had taken to read one of Aunt Zelda's potion recipes. Wolf-Boy knew there wasn't much he could do to help Jenna with the locum tenens, but he thought he could try out the skills he had learned when he had lived with the wolverines in the forest. And so Wolf-Boy sat down about 10 feet in front of Spitfire and very deliberately fixed his gaze on the dragon, willing him to stay calm and quiet. Spitfire caught Wolf-Boy's glance and quickly looked away, but it was enough. The dragon knew he was being watched. He shifted about uncomfortably, but he did not move away. Spitfire sat unusually still in the soft drizzle, hoping that soon his imprinter would appear and put an end to the unnerving two-legged wolverine who would not stop staring at him. At last Jenna was sure that she could remember the locum tenens. She picked up Septimus's boots and laid them at Spitfire's feet. Still quiet, Spitfire sniffed the boots. Then he reared up his head and blew out a long, hot breath. Wolf-Boy felt sick. He was not used to the smell of dragon breath, which is best described as a combination of the stench of burning rubber and the stink of old socks, with overtones of a hamster cage in dire need of a cleaning. Jenna stood on tiptoe and rested her hand on Spitfire's nose. "Look at me, Spitfire," she said. Spitfire looked at his feet. He looked at the sky. He looked at his claws, and then, twisting his head back, he suddenly found the tip of his tail extremely interesting. "Spitfire," said Jenna, insistent. "Look at me. Please." Something in Jenna's voice caught Spitfire's attention. He put his head to one side and looked at her. Jenna kept her hand firmly on the dragon's wet and sticky nose. Her hand was trembling. This was her only chance of finding Septimus, and it all depended on Spitfire, who was not the most dependable of creatures. Spitfire regarded Jenna warily. Did she have his breakfast with her? He wondered. Jenna held Spitfire's gaze. Then she took a deep breath and slowly began. "Spitfire, look at me, and I will tell you the 5 things you must understand. First, Spitfire, in good faith I tell you that your imprinter is lost." Spitfire cocked his head and hoped it wasn't porridge for breakfast again. "Second, Spitfire, in good faith I bring you that which belongs to your imprinter." Spitfire closed his eyes and decided a couple of chickens would be very tasty. "Open your eyes, Spitfire," said Jenna sternly. Spitfire opened his eyes. What was all the fuss about? "Third, Spitfire, in good faith I tell you that I am your navigator." Spitfire thought that he wouldn't mind chickens and porridge that morning, preferably all mixed together in a big bucket. "Fourth, Spitfire, in good faith I ask you to accept me as your locum imprinter." Spitfire wondered if they might give him 3 chickens with his porridge, since breakfast was late. "Fifth, Spitfire, in good faith I beseech you to find your true imprinter, through fire and water, earth and air, wherever he may be." Jenna held Spitfire's gaze for the required 13 seconds, and then looked away. Spitfire wondered if he had to find Septimus before or after breakfast. He hoped it was after. Then he picked up Septimus's boots and ate them. "Spitfire!" yelled Jenna. "Give them back!" She grabbed at a fast-disappearing bootlace and pulled. Spitfire pulled his head back. He liked tug-of-war games, and this seemed like a good one. He had always thought that Septimus's boots looked tasty. Jenna tugged hard. There was a snap, and she was left holding nothing more than the damp, frayed end of a bootlace. Spitfire swallowed, gave a satisfied burp, and then jumped in surprise. A deafening clanging and banging had just started up outside the great arch, along with some loud and threatening whoops and screams. Wolf-Boy leaped to his feet in consternation. He did not like suddenly loud noises. They reminded him too much of the young army's midnight wake-up call. "It's the rat stranglers," said Jenna. "They must have found a rat. Poor creature. Doesn't stand a chance now. You'd think people would have something better to do than run around the castle all day banging trash can lids and killing rats." The noise became louder as the rat stranglers started up their chant. "Rats, rats, get the rats! Rats, rats, kill the rats! Rat trap, splat, splat, splat!" It echoed around the wizard tower courtyard, and numerous wizards threw open their windows to see what the noise was. Then, with a roar, the assorted mob of rat stranglers surged through the great arch in pursuit of their quarry. 2 desperate rats in full flight, one dragging the other behind it. Why the rats headed for the dragon kennel, Jenna did not know, but they scooted across the courtyard, ignoring the relative safety of the well and 2 convenient drains. They dived between Spitfire's feet, shot up the ramp of the kennel, and hurled themselves deep into the pungent straw covering the kennel floor. In a moment the rat stranglers had surrounded the kennel, banging their lids and chanting. Spitfire snorted in dismay. No dragon likes to be surrounded, especially by a ruckus mob, banging lids and screaming. Dragons generally have a surprisingly subtle ear for music, and enjoy the finer kinds of classical music and plain song. Indeed, many an isolated monastery has been surprised to find a dragon regularly turning up to listen to the evening's Gregorian chant. Spitfire was no exception. The banging made his delicate dragon ears hurt, and the chanting was not even in tune. With a roar, he rounded on the rat stranglers, breathing hot dragon breath over them. Most people would have given up at this point, and some of the hangers-on, who had just come along for a laugh and a bit of fun, took off, but the bulk of the rat stranglers stayed. They had never yet lost a rat, and they did not intend to start now. Jenna was furious. "How dare you!" she yelled. "How dare you come in here chasing 2 poor rats and frightening a young dragon? How dare you!" The noise subsided as the rat stranglers, who in their excitement had not noticed the princess, put down their lids. The chant peered out into an embarrassed silence. The leader of the rat stranglers, an earnest-looking young man sporting a badge showing a fearsome rat with huge yellow fangs dripping with blood, stepped forward. "We are doing our civic duty, your princessness. Rats are filthy vermin. They spread disease." At this, Jenna laughed. "That's ridiculous. They're as clean as you or I, and it's humans that spread disease, not rats." "We beg to differ, princess," said the young man. "The sickenese that has come to the castle has been brought by the rats. They must be destroyed." "That's crazy," said Jenna, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're just chasing rats because you like killing defenseless animals. It's horrible." "You should be grateful to us," a thin, reedy voice piped up from the back of the crowd. "Why?" asked Jenna, catching the threat in her voice. "Because some people say that you have brought the sickenese, princess." "Me?" Jenna was incredulous. "They say it came on your dragon boat. They say it's a pity that mutant ship wasn't left on the bottom of the moat where it belongs." This was accompanied by a general muttering of agreement from the back of the throng, but no one near Jenna dared say anything. Jenna was shocked into silence, and the rat stranglers took her silence for permission to invade Spitfire's kennel. They swarmed up the ramp, and in no time at all they were raking through the straw, searching for the rats. Jenna and Wolfboy were overwhelmed by sheer numbers, and there was nothing they could do, but Spitfire decided otherwise. As the rat stranglers crowded past him, he swung his tail angrily and sent the owner of the reedy voice flying into a pile of dragon droppings at the back of the kennel. Then, with a loud creaking as the tough dragon skin stretched out from its creases, accompanied by the smell of stale dragon sweat, Spitfire unfurled his wings and raised them high into the air, casting a shadow across the dragon kennel. The rat stranglers stopped their hunt and watched in amazement as Spitfire bowed his head toward Jenna, as if inviting her to sit where Septimus always sat, just behind his neck between his shoulders. Afraid that Spitfire might change his mind any minute, Jenna scrambled up into Septimus's place and hauled Wolfboy up behind her, into the navigator's position where she usually sat. Then, remembering the instructions that Althor had given Septimus on Spitfire's first flight, she gave the dragon 2 kicks on the right side. They worked. Spitfire beat his wings slowly, once, twice, and on the 3rd stroke Jenna felt the dragon's muscles tense as he rose just a few inches off the ground, keeping himself steady and controlled in the close confines of the Wizard Tower courtyard. Then, as Spitfire hovered for a brief moment and prepared to accelerate, a yell came from one of the rat stranglers. "There they are! Catch 'em!" As Spitfire left the ground, he was carrying more passengers than he had bargained for. Hanging from the barb on the tip of his tail were 2 terrified rats.